Iskon Guruvinda ki, Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gora Premanande. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. We're still on this last chapter, are we? I think somebody just keeps on losing the place or something. So here we are, back again at Krishna Balaram Mandir. The devotees were upset to see that Prabhupada's condition had deteriorated so much in the 1 month he had been away. His room was as he had left it, except for the addition of a large double bed. He lay down and they closed the curtains and dimmed the lights. For about 5 minutes he lay still with his eyes closed. Now you're home, Srila Prabhupada said to Malakrishna. Still, Srila Prabhupada lay quietly, not moving. Then slowly he brought his hands to his chest, clasped them together and said, "Thank you." He seemed relieved. Now you are in the care of Krishna Balaram, said Tamal Krishna. Srila Prabhupada smiled and nodded slightly. Yes, he said, Krishna Turiya Pada Panka Japanjarantam, indicating King Kulashekhar's prayer. My dear Krishna, please help me die immediately so that the swan of my mind may be encircled in the stem of your lotus feet. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, how it will be possible for me to think of you? Although Srila Prabhupada was in a precarious state, he remained completely fixed in thought of Krishna in one way or another. Krishna's name, his form, his pastimes, or his devotional service. Prabhupada suggested going to see Krishna and Balaram at 9:30 just as he had done before, but the servants advised that he rest today and begin that program tomorrow. Whatever you desire, I will do, Prabhupada said. Tamal Krishna asked Prabhupada if he wanted the Kaviraj to come. As you said, Prabhupada, for better or worse, some husband must be there. Srila Prabhupada nodded. Now manage everything, he said, and let me think of Krishna Balaram. This is very interesting. That Srila Prabhupada, he didn't retire and do nothing practically until this is like only a very short period of time before he leaves his body. And it's only at this point practically saying, now you do everything, manage everything, and let me think of Krishna Balaram. And so Prabhupada showed us this example. This is called Seva Samadhi. Sometimes we get concerned with our own Samadhi. How am I going to think of Krishna? But the service to Krishna is not different from Krishna. It's his service. It's not that when we go back to the spiritual world and everyone's doing service and we're going to be sitting there thinking, I'm too busy meditating on Krishna to do any Nitya Seva. I'm chanting my japa, come back when I'm finished my rounds. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 3, entitled Hiranyakashipu's Plan to Become Immortal, Text 20. Vyavasayena te anena Vyavasayena te nena Dushkarena manasvinam taponishtena bhavata Jito aham diti nandana Jito aham diti nandana Vyavasayena tenena. Vyavasayena tenena. Tushkarena manashvinam. Tushkarena manashvinam. Taponishtena bhavata. Taponishtena bhavata. Jitoham ditinandana. Jitoham ditinandana. Vyavasayena tenena. Tushkarena manashvinam. Taponishtena bhavata. Jitoham ditinandana. Vyavasayena tenena. Tushkarena manashvinam. Taponishtena bhavata. Jitoham ditinandana. Please chant. Vyavasayena tenena. Tushkarena manashvinam. Taponishtena bhavata. Anybody else? Vyavasayena. By termination. Te your. Anena. This. Duskarena. Difficult to perform. Manasvinam. Even for the great sages and saintly persons. Tapanishtena. Aimed at executing austerity. Bhavata. By you. Jita. Conquered. Aham. I. Ditinandana. O son of Diti. Translation, my dear son of Diti, with your great determination and austerity, you have done what was impossible even for great saintly persons, and thus I have certainly been conquered by you. Please repeat, my dear son of Diti, with your great determination and austerity, you have done what was impossible even for great saintly persons, and thus I have certainly been conquered by you. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In regard to the word Jita, Srila Madhava Muni gives the following quotation from the Shabda Nirnaya. Parabhutam vashastam cha jitabid uchate budai. If one comes under someone else's control or is defeated by another, he is called Jita. Hiranyakashipu's austerity was so great and wonderful that even Lord Brahma agreed to be conquered by him. Om Agana Tamarandasya Giranjana Slakaya Chakshulmitam Yana Tasma Shigurave Nama Vakam Kuroti Vachalam Bhagam Lagate Grimya Kripatamam Vande Shigrim Dilkaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadigura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear son of Diti, with your great determination and austerity, you have done what was impossible even for great saintly persons, and thus I have certainly been conquered by you. So this word Jita means conquered, and of course the other, the opposite of that is Ajita, one who cannot be conquered or who has not been conquered. And this is one name for Krishna. There's many names for Krishna describing different aspects of Krishna's supremacy. So, such as Ajita means unconquerable. What does Achyuta mean? Infallible. What's the difference? It means he has no fault, right? And there's another one, Asamordva. Have you came across that one? Asamordva. Someone that no one is equal to or greater than that person. And there's unlimited names describing Krishna. So this word Jita also is relevant to ourselves because this is there's a term called Jitendriya. Does anyone remember that term, Jitendriya? To be controller, like Indra means king, right? Indra or Endra, Jitendra, king of the senses, to be in control of the senses, yeah. So this is taking us to the fundamental, the basics of Krishna consciousness. We're finding this in the Nectar of Instruction, Vacha Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pasta Vegam, Etan Veganyo, Vishahita Dira, Chishashtaham Sham Twab, whatever it is, forget the last line. So there, Prabhupada said, one who can control the senses, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, they're qualified to make disciples all over the world. So when Hari Prabhu was here once, asked him the question, what is the qualification of a bona fide spiritual master? And he said, he asked Prabhupada this question. Prabhupada said, 16 rounds and 4 regulative principles. He is Guru, or she is Guru. Anybody, anyone who can follow those 4 principles and chant the 16 rounds, because it's no small thing to do that. I mean, who out there is even thinking at all to do that? It doesn't cross their mind, does it? They simply, their goal is the opposite, is to enjoy the senses to the max. And even when their bodies are old and useless, they still want to enjoy somehow. They're trying to find some way to be eternal in this body. So they continue to enjoy with it because their concept of life is that they think they're this body. But Srila Prabhupada says that the devotees, their goal is to reduce this eating, sleeping, mating, and defending to 0. So because, of course, we can't do that artificially. It's not that we should just, Prabhupada says we shouldn't sleep, so I better take 10 cups of coffee a day to stay awake. That's contradicting one of the principles. But we should become so advanced in Krishna consciousness that these things are no longer important to us. Just like when the Goswamis, sometimes in the Sad Goswami Astakam, you hear them say that they were bowed down in scheduled measurement. This meant that every moment of their day it wasn't just left to chance, it was actually consciously utilized in the service of the Lord. They weren't just like doing the least they can and then zipping off to do something that they want to do. What they wanted to do was what Krishna wanted to do. They're making their desire one with Krishna. And this way, they become desireless. And because of their absorption in Krishna consciousness, then they forgot about the bodily necessities. This is how the reduction of the eating, sleeping, mating, defending takes place, is that we become so absorbed in Krishna that we forget. Anybody here think they might forget that it's prasadam time in half an hour? Jainanda, did you think you might forget? You'd be so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that you forget it's prasadam time? We're not quite on that stage, are we? And of course, prasadam is also service. So this is our goal, is to conquering over the mind and the senses. And that requires that we have to say no to the senses and the mind sometimes. Sometimes we're letting the mind take control, and we'll say no to other devotees, we'll say no to sometimes to Krishna's service being offered to us, because the mind is actually powerful. But actually we conquer the mind by not listening to its dictates. And this is very difficult because our mind is actually a lot more powerful and has a lot more control over us than we can think of, that we're aware of. So therefore this regular practice of devotional service is there to gradually purify us, to come to the point that we have to engage ourselves, Prabhupada said, as if by force. So to begin with, we have to put in some discipline, engage ourselves as if by force. Like we might not want to stay awake in class, but we have to try to force ourselves to stay awake because we're going to get benefit from it. Or we might not like to do this, or we might not like to do that. But if Krishna and Krishna's representatives say this is good for your spiritual life, then we try to understand that, and we rationalize, we intellectualize, or we understand the theory of it, and we put it into practice, and then that jnana, that knowledge, becomes vijnana when we actually put it into practice. And when we see that it's a fact, then it becomes vijnana, realized knowledge. So there's one occasion where I was doing some difficult service, and I had something else put on top of me on top of that, which was I was finding quite a bit of a struggle. And the devotee was convincing me to do it, or trying to. And so they say, no, just do this. And I said, well, I can't see why I have to do it. And they says, you have to do it first. And then you'll see. You can't intellectualize it. So that is the nature of it. In order to enter into the world which is beyond the realm of the mind and senses, we have to put a little trust into instruction which is coming from beyond the platform of the mind and senses. And when we hold on to that, that will take us out of that limited sphere of existence. The mind is so powerful, unbelievably powerful, but actually for the soul who has risen above the power of the mind, they are much more powerful. The soul is much more powerful than this. Brighter than 1,000 suns, as Mangalananda says. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe the soul as amazing, and some hear them as amazing, and some, even after hearing about the soul, they still can't understand. So this is the nature of Maya. She makes a living entity so dull, like a donkey, that we can't understand the transcendental subject matter. But the good news is that even if we are dull-headed, this is mentioned in the Shastra as well, that a spiritual master can enlighten even a dull-headed disciple. So there's no material impediment. We may think, oh, I'm too stupid to become a devotee, or I'm too dull, or I'm too fallen. But that's only relating to our material condition. But Krishna, through the spiritual master, through the process of devotional service, then he will uplift us from any type of material obstacle. So because Krishna is Ajita, it's not that somebody shows up at the temple and Krishna says, oh, that one's too fallen, I can't save that one. I'm conquered, I'm defeated. You see many examples of people who are much more demonic than us. Here we've got Hiranyakashipu. He's so determined that even the demigods can't compete with the austerities that he's performing. And the demigods did many lifetimes of austerities in order to become demigods. And Hiranyakashipu, because he's actually a Vaikuntha Vasi, then he's got a special Shakti. It's not that we think, okay, Hiranyakashipu got some power by this, let me head to the forest. And there's a bunch of trees over there, and we go over there and we stand on one leg, and we eat only dry leaves for the first months. And then after that, we just eat whatever comes into our mouth. So these are different austerities we perform. We can't do that. We don't have the capacity for that. Even these demigods didn't have the capacity for the austerities that Hiranyakashipu was performing. And of course, finally, he, by his austerities, he gets the audience of Lord Brahma. And this chapter here is Hiranyakashipu's plan to become immortal. And he was no fool. From our point of view, I mean, what do you say? Hindsight is, having the gift of hindsight. What's that saying? There's a gift of... Yeah, I mean, it's always easy to look back and think, oh, that was... anyone could have figured that one out. But in hindsight, it's easy to see that. But before it's not. Just like, now who was it? Was it Sir Isaac Newton? He was being criticised for something. If it wasn't Sir Isaac Newton, then if anybody knows who it was, but there was one personality who was being criticised. He was actually achieving. They say that if you don't have any critics, if you don't have any enemies, then you've never done anything in life. So if you do experience you've got some enemies, then you can understand, I must be doing something. I must be getting somewhere in life. Because envious people will just typically be attracted to try to bring you down. It's a nature. So this person, he had an egg, and he said to his assistant, they were saying, he did something that nobody had done before, whatever it was, and they were saying, oh, anybody could have done that, but of course they didn't. He was the first one to break through in that sphere, whatever it was. So he had an egg, and he asked his assistant, can you stand it up, make it stand without falling over? So he tried to balance it for ages, and he couldn't. He said, no, it's impossible. So he took the egg, and he just gave a little tap, so the bottom of it went flat, and he stood it. And his assistant said, anyone could have done that. He says, yes, but you didn't, I did. So sometimes people look at the devotees and they don't really appreciate what we're doing because they live in a different world, and even amongst ourselves sometimes we don't give proper credit. So we should try to appreciate that each and every one of us here, we don't have to be here. We could be somewhere else, we could be doing something else, but we've chosen to be here. And that's no small thing. To try to endeavour for perfection. There's not many people who will attempt this Manusyanam Sahasreshu. Out of many thousands or millions, then one may endeavour for perfection. Out of many of those, hardly one knows Krishna in truth. But Srila Prabhupada, he's through his teachings, his writings, his words, and through the parampara, then this hardly one knows me in truth is becoming, this confidential secret is becoming like public knowledge. And Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they broke open the storehouse of love of God to distribute it freely. So in this Kali Yuga, although we may be short-lived, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Above all, always disturbed. These are the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So although those things may be there, and although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, then Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and his associates are giving us, who are considered to be the lowest in this age, they're giving us the highest. All we have to do is stick with it in due course of time, then that perfection is ours. It's an inheritance. So when We have some trouble with the mind and senses. Don't be dismayed. One time, one devotee said to Prabhupada that he had trouble controlling his, I think it was his tongue, or his mind or his senses. Prabhupada said, I also have senses. So he was kind of letting him know that it's not just like there's no temptation there, there's no struggle for anybody. But Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness means, oh yeah, so this is only to another story actually. There was a sannyasi with Srila Prabhupada in his room, and there was one pretty young lady came in and was cleaning Prabhupada's room, or she was doing some other service, and Prabhupada commented to this young sannyasi devotee, she's a very pretty girl, isn't she? And the sannyasi didn't know what to say, what to do. He said, no, but she's a very beautiful young lady, isn't she? And eventually, because the devotee was very embarrassed, he didn't know what to say. Prabhupada says, yes, we can see that, but Krishna consciousness means we do nothing about it. So in this way, the devotees, they don't try to exploit each other for personal gratification. We respect each other. We don't see each other as objects of the senses. And this is the only way, really. We can try some artificial way to legalize this and that, the next thing, but really the only way to develop proper respect is through control of the senses and to see each and every living entity on the spiritual platform. Otherwise, we think someone is there to be exploited by us, to be used and abused. But when we see everyone in relation to Krishna, then if someone comes to the temple, we think, how can I make this person's stay here palatable? How can we make their, not just palatable, but how can we make it positive? They have a nice experience and they want to come back. So to do that, we must absorb Krishna consciousness ourselves. And then we can convey that to other people. When we talk about preaching, basically what we're doing is just simply trying to share the nectar. In order to share it, we have to get it ourselves. And even when we talk about sharing the nectar, sometimes we don't even realize we have a taste. The fact that we are not just waking up in bed with a hangover just now means that we're actually getting a taste in Krishna consciousness because we're doing this instead. We've been awake already for like 4 or 5 hours already, some of us. But some people, they're just getting out of bed now begrudgingly. And if they're lucky, they'll throw a slice of toast down their neck and a cup of coffee on the way to the bus or the car to go to a job, to do something they don't like to do, simply so they can get some money to do something at the weekend to forget about that. And occasionally, sometimes people may have a passion for what they're doing, but what does it amount to really? How many civilizations have came and gone in the past? So what is the value of their passionate endeavors? Shishi Kodni Taima Pashanshi Ki Jan. So the thing with materialistic endeavors of demoniac persons, that see Krishna, I think it's Lord Brahma here, has been conquered by the austerities of Hiranyakashipu. It's Lord Brahma speaking here, isn't it? Yeah. So he's somewhat duty bound. If someone performs certain austerities, then just like if you go to the shop and you give your money, then they're duty bound to give you the product for it. If you pay for a service or you pay for a product, they have to give it to you. It's just simply a business transaction. So when someone performs austerities, even though they may be great austerities, we can't think, how could someone perform such austerities? We have no idea how they could do that. then still it's simply a business transaction between the person performing the austerities and the demigod who they're petitioning. So Lord Brahma may have come under the control, and he's somewhat glorifying his determination. But when he finds out what is the purpose of his austerities, then we see, when he starts to speak about that purpose, then we see that his purpose is not it's not a good purpose. And he simply wants to become immortal. And why does he want to become immortal? But we already are immortal. And it makes you wonder, why didn't he know that already? If he knew about maintaining the life air within the bones for 10,000 years or whatever it was, then did he not know about the immortality of the soul? But he wanted to be basically in charge of the universe. He wanted to be Brahma. He wanted to be the ruler over everybody. And of course, when Lord Brahma says, well, I'm not immortal, so how can I give you what I don't have? Then he said, okay, I'm smarter than you. I'll outwit you on this one. Then I don't want to be killed in this circumstance, that circumstance. And so he came up with every circumstance you could consider of how you could be killed. So he thought he'd covered all bases. And this just goes to show that how smart, if you had read this story, and then before you hear about Lord Nrsingadev, you'd think, wow, he's got it all covered. There's no way he could die now. Can't be killed day, night, land, sky, sea, indoors, outdoors, by a man, a beast, and a weapon. So there's nothing else left. But Krishna is so intelligent that, he could have just said, forget the promises, I'm killing you anyway because I'm not bound by your rules. He could have just done that anyway. But Krishna is so smart. And he shows us that Daivihi Shagunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya, this divine energy of mine is very difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So the demigods, they couldn't overcome Hiranyakashipu's wit, his intelligence, his determination, and he had all these promises which were kept intact, and still Lord Nrsingadev easily dispatched of him. So being an infinitesimal, we cannot understand the unlimited infinite. But if Krishna gives a little bit of mercy, then we can understand whatever he allows us to understand. And that comes by our constant devotion. If we simply want a comfortable situation in the material world, then we're going to regret it at the time of death, because that's what we'll get. Okay, you want a comfortable situation in your world, then you better stay here then. But you'll not find it. We might for some time find some comfortable situation, but it won't last. So the thing here is, just as we can take gold from a filthy place when we see that Hiranyakashipu had such great determination, performed austerities, did the impossible, then how much more is this possible when we're surrendering to Krishna? We can overcome all obstacles. Matchita sarvadurgani mats prasad trishasi attachet tvam mahankran nashoshasi vinakshasi. Just become conscious of me, and you'll overcome all obstacles of conditional life by my grace. Mat prasadat trishasi. If, however, you do not act in such consciousness but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So we have to be hearing Krishna, we have to be hearing about Krishna, we have to be hearing the name Krishna. And if we're seeing our japa, our service, our regulation as a chore, then we have to really focus into it, because the mind's coming in, and that's very dangerous, because the mind is, eventually what happens is that everything becomes intolerable. So we have to keep on focusing the mind every single day. And from the moment we get up to the moment our head hits the pillow, we want to keep on focusing the mind, trying to perfect our endeavors in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna says every endeavor's cut by some fault. So don't think, oh, I've done a fault, that's too bad, I'm not much of a devotee. Forget that. Just leave that in the past. That's gone. If you can learn from it, that's good, but don't let it stop you doing what you can do. So although Krishna is Ajita, he cannot be conquered, then Krishna is actually conquered by love. Sometimes even within ISKCON, it's mentioned that the devotee is so attractive by the devotee's service and surrender, and Krishna is attracted to that person so much so that he cannot leave him in the material world. He has to take him back. So sometimes this is what happens, that the Lord, out of separation for his part and parcel, he just takes the person back. So this is because Krishna is conquered by that devotee's love. Okay, you've proved yourself, come back. I believe you. And the spiritual master, this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to convince us to become devotees, and he's trying to convince Krishna, look, this is a nice devotee. And when we follow, then the spiritual master can say that. But if not, then it puts the spiritual master in an awkward position, doesn't it? But still, even if we're not perfect, there was one conversation, I don't know if anyone remembers it, where it was, but Prabhupada said, even if you're not 100% perfect, if you're like 70% perfect, was it? Does anyone remember the percentages? But eventually, I think the devotees managed to get Prabhupada to say something like a lesser percentage anyway. And then he says, well, if you just dedicate your life to this Sankirtan movement, I'll get you in the back door. I've got the key. There's another occasion, Prabhupada says, just hang on to my dhoti. So in this regard, we have friends in high places. So we simply try to help them in their mission to please Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to fulfill this prophecy of getting the holy name to every town and village, and serving that mission in some way, so that either we're serving on the front line or we're serving back here for those who have came into contact with the devotees who come to visit the temple. Then either way, we're a preaching movement. We're not simply just staying back here to avoid going out there. We're staying here to serve the Lord, making the deities nice so that when people come, they'll be affected. There's one occasion, before we built Gauranga Hall, this was about, I think it was about 2010 or 11, we had the councillor and the planning here. And the councillor was quite favourable towards us, and he was trying to convince the planning people, just to let us do what we need to do. So he said to me, I'll bring them up and just give them a tour around here, let them see what you're doing. So we did a little tour, and then I thought, shall I take them into the temple or not? So I brought them into the temple, and as soon as I brought them in, then they were affected by the atmosphere of the Lord's presence. They didn't know what it was. They said, oh, it's an amazing atmosphere in here. So I thought, they're probably not quite ready for me seeing it. It's because you're standing in front of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his older brother. So I says, yeah, well, the devotees are in here doing their meditation every day. It makes a very nice atmosphere. And the person says, oh, yeah, actually, I've been to India and I'm vegetarian, and started to come out with things. So we left the temple, and the councillor said to the head of planning, said, so what do you think? Should we just let them do what they want? She says, yeah, but we'll do it properly. So on account of that, then we got permission to have this place as a place of public worship, because prior to that it was just a house. if you don't have a place of public worship and you've got so many people here, they could say, "Oh, you can't do this. It's overcrowding or whatever." You see, the Manor had a big campaign for many years that to build a whole different road access in. So we got permission for that building for next door, which we haven't done yet, and planning for what do you call it, religious planning for use permission for religious use. So this is preaching. The Bacharis are also preaching. And the devotees, when they're working in the fields and people are coming, just like we've got some people coming to visit on Friday, and it could be the start of another program where devotees are bringing their work crews to visit and paying to do it as well and do service. They're getting an experience and they're paying for it. So whatever we're doing, we're trying to make some kind of inroad for the living entities to Krishna consciousness. And sometimes if we're, some people are too far away to actually just get into the straightforward things, so you have to make little bridges for them to connect with them wherever they're at. And Prabhupada, if you read various biographies, you'll see the conversations between Prabhupada and his disciples of the different things they tried in the early days. For example, there was some devotees went to Prabhupada, they were in 26 2nd Avenue, and he says, "Prabhupada, should we try wearing suits?" They were going out preaching, selling books, and he says, "Yes, try it, try this, try that." Whatever they come up with, basically, Prabhupada says, give it, try it out, whatever works. So we shouldn't think that Krishna consciousness should only be this way, and that it can be always. Like we have this Krishna West, but Krishna is all pervasive. He's not just like in the West or in the East. He can be everywhere. He can be in traditional robes. He can be in Western clothes. Whatever it is, the main thing is to accept that which is favourable and reject that which is unfavourable. And when we're preaching to people, then we have to consider what is their ability to accept Krishna consciousness. What are their interests? Is what we're doing bringing them closer or making them, pushing them away? So there's scope for all sorts of ways of preaching. I remember one time Sri Ramswamy said to me, asked about various programs. He says, "Try it." He says, "But don't be attached to dropping the program if it's not working. If it's not making devotees or if it's not bringing people to Krishna consciousness, then don't be attached to a particular program. The main thing is to be a devotee and to make devotees. And before that, before even making devotees, we have to be a devotee ourselves. That doesn't mean to say that, okay, we better just stay in here. I'll chant 64 rounds for the next 20 years. And once I feel like I'm advanced enough, then I can consider about sharing my Krishna consciousness with someone else. No, Prabhupada said, whatever you've learned, he said, we cannot repay the debt to the spiritual master, but we can try to repay it by sharing our Krishna consciousness. He says, whatever you've learned in Krishna consciousness, then just share that. Preach from our own level of realization. Because whatever that is, it's going to be more realization than some materialist out there who's completely in Maya. Sometimes we don't even realize what advancement we've made ourselves. And people say, "Oh, you're such a nice devotee," and we're thinking, "You don't know me." If you knew what I was like, you wouldn't be saying that. But even still, maybe they do see more of us than we realise, but they still accept us as a nice devotee because it's not easy being a devotee in the material world. We have our conditioning, we have mind and senses. There's so many options, but we're not choosing those. We're carrying on with the Krishna consciousness. So we can learn from Hiranyakashipu to be determined. And this is the purpose of the regulative principles, is to help us become determined, ekeha kurunandana, to become single-pointed in meditating on Krishna and serving Krishna. And we don't do austerity just for the sake of being austere. That kind of thing leads to pride, which makes us hard-hearted. But the austerities are there simply in the course of doing our duty, that's all. So, Any comments or questions or corrections? Yes, Panchatattva.
Thank you very much. I was just hearing recently, I wonder if you could comment on it, this idea of conquering, and the relationship between the guru and the disciple should be one of conquering, like both ways. Like the examples given was like, Prabhupada, he was like cooking this feast very early days, like the Sunday feast. He was cooking just like 15 preparations, all incredibly delicious, and then he's cleaning, he's serving everybody, and then he's cleaning, etc. I said this alone, this sort of act of service, conquered some of the people, and then they thought, how can I repay this? And then similarly, there's examples like Ramananda, Prabhu, he was in preaching, and I think, I'm not sure where Prabhupada thought that he might have been killed. And then afterwards, he says, "You're going back to Godhead." That's his mood. He's so grateful for the service he's done. So could you maybe sort of comment on conquering in that relationship?
So in the material world, if somebody conquers someone, it means they lord over them, doesn't it? William the Conqueror. And so many people are conquering. Even just now on this planet, the Russians are trying to conquer the Ukrainians, and with something going on in between Israel and Palestine, they're trying to conquer over one another. They don't want to share. Or someone wants to be the boss because they don't want anybody to be above them. They want to be the lord over all I survey. So this is the material way of conquering, is to subjugate others. And in spiritual life, then we conquer over not by trying to be the Lord, but by trying to be the servant. And Srila Prabhupada, he demonstrated that himself, that he could conquer over the devotees by his humility, his service. For example, there was one old man from Dundee, Willie. He lived to, he was about 100, I think he was. He met Prabhupada and he lived at the manor for a little while. And he used to relate this story that the staircase coming down from the first floor, from Prabhupada's room down to the temple room, so one devotee was cleaning it, and Prabhupada said, "No, not like this, like this." And he says, "Go and get me 2 buckets." He got 2 buckets, and he was using a mop, and he says, "This dog head mop is no use, just moving dirt around." He says, 2 buckets, one with hot soapy water and one with cold clean water. He used 1 bucket for, and Prabhupada rolled up his dhoti and got down on his hands and knees, and he cleaned the stairs of back to the manor in front of all the devotees to show them how to do it. He got the 1 hot cloth, he cleaned it, then he got the other one and then he rinsed it. And of course, you can imagine how the devotees must have felt. But this old man, Willie, he said, there you have a pure devotee of Krishna, spiritual master of the entire world, and spiritual master of many people, head of a worldwide organization, and he's down on his hands and knees showing them how to clean a floor. So he was certainly conquered by Prabhupada's humility. And Prabhupada he took his service as guru very seriously. Sometimes Prabhupada would chastise strongly, and sometimes it didn't matter who was around. It could be public cameras or TV, because Prabhupada thought, my disciple is more important than this television show, what's going on. It happened in Amsterdam when they were opening a temple. And Prabhupada strongly chastised the devotees because they did something which put Krishna in danger. The altar was about to fall on his head. And at the same time, we hear was it Malini? Malati. There was this occasion where Prabhupada, in front of his godbrothers, No, I think she was serving him personally. And this goes for so many of the devotees. Completely dedicated Prabhupada. And she was just kind of moving behind the scenes, cleaning, cooking, and things like that. And he was speaking with his godbrothers. And he says, this lady here, she would slit her throat for me and I would slit my throat for her. So this is not some kind of crazy cult thing. This shows the amount of dedication that because the disciple will do anything for the spiritual master will do anything for the disciple. And Krishna will also be there for that. My devotee will never perish. So, would you like to add anything to that? Any other comments or questions? So bear in mind, when you're undergoing some difficulty, if you continue with your service, you're actually becoming dear to Krishna. And there's hardly a day goes by when there's not some kind of difficulty there, is there? So just be patient. Don't think, oh, too much difficulty. Let me take the easy road out. The easy road out is not the easy road in the long run. That is paving the way for a long, difficult road back to where you took the detour. And then eventually, it's just like you're going on ice. You know where you're going. You think, oh, let's just take that detour. This road's too steep. So you go there, and then before you know it, you're lost. You don't know where you started. And then eventually you might come back to where you diverted yourself, and then you have to continue up the same hill anyway. So whatever is between us and Krishna consciousness, pure devotional service, that is basically our false ego. That's what we have to overcome. It may appear as this or that externally, but it's our false ego. That is what's between us and Krishna. And if we shy away from it, we're only going to have to come back to the same thing. And to get back to that same point where we're ready to take that step, if we divert from Krishna consciousness, then we have to clean the heart again just to get to that same point. So whatever point we're at now, it may have been the point we gave up in the last life. Because we must have, otherwise why would we be here? But if we just continually endeavour and pray to Krishna, take good association, take shelter in the holy name. I do admit that at certain times I've been so perplexed. I don't know what to do. Just says, hand in the bead bag. You can't fail. Just put your hand in the bead bag and start chanting. When things become difficult, then we don't apply less Krishna consciousness. We apply more Krishna consciousness. The cure is a spiritual cure. So, and Prabhupada says, just to finish, that devotional service begins when things become difficult. So, okay, we're preparing for that difficulty, just like someone who's preparing for a marathon. They do so much training for that. But we're not alone, so don't think if we're in some difficulty that we're on our own. We're only on our own if we isolate ourselves, and we don't need to do that. And sometimes we think that things are insurmountable, but when you reveal your mind to someone else, then they say, oh, yeah, I experienced that as well. And you just, Prabhupada says this about that, and you go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Or you just do this or do that, or you just have to tolerate. But sometimes it's just a matter of, they say, a problem shared is a problem to have, doesn't it? Just the matter that we can express it, then it diminishes the problem itself. Okay, better stop there. It's going to go to Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
His Grace Prabhupada Prana Prabhu Ki Jai.